1 second. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about why shame and guilt are always going to be the loudest when we're developing new awareness. Okay, so this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because I feel like this is one of the most common things we see on the path of self-love, of self-awareness, of spirituality, of personal growth, personal development. Just anytime we are looking at our lives and we are attempting to solve a problem, we're attempting to get to know ourselves a little bit better, we're attempting to understand why something is happening the way that it's happening, we're attempting to understand how we might be participating in how our reality is unfolding. And when we are just on this path of trying to discover truth in any kind of way, or trying to change our lives in any way, trying to make any kind of change to the way that we relate to people, to the way that we relate to ourselves, to the way that we treat our bodies, to the way that we're working, any of these things. The idea that we are going to come up against that inner critic voice, that shame voice, that guilt voice that tells us that we are fundamentally flawed, that everything is our fault, that if we discover that we've been playing any kind of role in any of the pain that we're in or that other people are in, that voice is going to come up and be like, see, you are bad, you are wrong, you shouldn't be this way, everything is your fault, your pain is your fault, other people's pain is your fault, and it's because you're a bad person, it's because you're unworthy of love, it is because you're not good enough. And at the same time, I feel like, again, when we are trying to connect with that saying, right, that who were you before you were told who to be, when we're trying to figure out our true self, our true likes and dislikes, our true personality, our true nature, whatever you want to call it, there can be, again, a lot of bumping up against parts of ourselves and discovering parts of ourselves that are in pain, that are immature, that are completely fine and perfect and natural and just weren't loved and accepted and understood by our caregivers or our culture. And we can bump up against these parts, and rather than thinking, oh good, this is who I am and this is what I am and this is just the thing that I'm going to step into now and yay, I've discovered the truth about myself, we think like, oh no, everyone was right about me, I'm horrible, these are bad parts, these are fundamentally flawed parts, if I really let myself be who and what I actually think that I am right now, that I'm admitting that I'm horrible. And this is just something that I feel like we need to kind of look at over and over and over and over again. And also we need to understand that those voices are going to get loud for a reason. The voices that tell us that we're horrible, the voices that tell us that we're fundamentally flawed, the voices that tell us that we're bad and we always have been bad and that we always are going to be bad and that we're guilty and that we're shameful, that these voices are not telling you the truth, okay? And even though they can be very, very loud and very, very convincing, and even though they're going to have all the evidence in the world to support their claim that you are horrible and that you are fundamentally unworthy of love and that you are fundamentally flawed, we need to develop some tools and some skills and some understanding to work with these shame and guilt and inner critic voices so that we can get to the other side to true awareness, okay? So this is the very first seed that I'd like to plant in this video today, and it is this. True awareness. When you've actually discovered true awareness, when you've really truly become aware of something, there will be no shame and there will be no guilt. There will be an understanding of why you are the way you are. There will be an understanding of why you have taken the actions you have taken. There will be an understanding of the whole, this makes perfect sense that I ended up here. And there may be a sense of like, okay, and now I need to change, and now I want to change, and now I can see that these things are harmful, and I can see that these things maybe don't serve the goal that I'm trying to serve, or this wasn't my intention. The way that I'm doing things isn't matching, the outcome isn't matching my intention. All of these things, we can get to a place where we want to change and where we want to grow and where we realize that what we're doing isn't the best way. But that won't be coming from a place of believing that we are fundamentally flawed and bad and horrible for having been the way that we were or having been doing what we've been doing. Okay? True awareness is never going to involve shame and guilt. True awareness will never involve shame and guilt. And this is the biggest thing that I want to hand you, if that is the only thing you listen to, if you only listen to the first 5 minutes of this video. When you have developed true awareness, there will not be shame and guilt. So if you are experiencing that shame and that guilt, that voice that is telling you that you are horrible, that you are fundamentally flawed, that you have been fucking things up on purpose, that you've been hurting yourself or others on purpose, that there is something actually just wrong with who and what you are, that is not awareness. Okay? That could be partial awareness, that can be on the way to awareness, but that is not full awareness. Okay? So this is the biggest thing. I've seen this so much in my mystery school community and just with people that I've worked with for the last 15 years of doing this work, that it is so common that we start to understand the reality that we're in, that we start to understand our patterns, that we start to understand, again, why we've been doing what we've been doing and how what we've been doing has been playing into our circumstances, how we've been wrong, how we've been harmful, how our intention has not matched our outcomes. And rather than continuing to say, okay, why? Why did that happen? Why is this happening? Where did I learn that this was the best way? What needs are being met in the ways that I'm doing things right now that I know no other way to meet? What is actually happening here? What is, like I say, my actual need? What's my actual desire? Why did I think this was the only way to do it? All of these things. Rather than continuing to go forward and discover that stuff, we stop at the see, what I'm doing is wrong, what I'm doing is bad, I'm getting bad results, I'm hurting myself, I'm hurting other people, and it is because I am shitty. It is because I am fundamentally flawed, and everyone was right about me, and I'm horrible, and this is terrible. And I think we all need the reminder to say, okay, when we run into that, when we are doing our self-awareness work, when we are looking at the patterns in our lives, when we're looking at our relationship patterns, our patterns with our bodies, our patterns with our work, whatever it is that we're looking at, when we're looking at the places in our lives where there is pain, and we're looking at how we may be contributing to that pain with our actions and our thoughts and our ways of being, and we start to discover, okay, I am playing a part in this. I am a part of the pain. I am a part of the misalignment. I am a part of the harm. The next question we always need to ask ourselves is, why? Am I doing that because I honestly am sitting here saying, I want to cause harm? I want to hurt myself. I have a clearly better option that I am very much able to do with no problem, and it gives me perfectly awesome, great results. And I'm just choosing to do this other thing. And I can guarantee you, nobody is ever going to say yes to that question. That I have a completely viable, completely satisfactory, totally scratches the itch of whatever it is that I'm doing in this harmful place, alternative option that I'm fully and completely capable of executing because I've done it before and it's worked and it's felt awesome. And I'm just choosing to do the harmful thing because I want to cause harm. because I want to hurt myself and I want to hurt other people. Okay? None of us are ever going to say yes to that. We have to understand that self-honesty does not mean we just look at ourselves and say, here are all the things that I'm doing shitty, and I'm just shitty. That is not honesty. That is not self-honesty. That is not self-awareness. That is not truth. That is an incomplete version of reality, always. Okay? Second thing, we have to start to ask ourselves again, where did the patterns that I'm in right now come from? Because I guarantee you, you did not just wake up one day in your adulthood and decide to start hurting yourself or someone else. I guarantee you that you did not wake up in your life right now and have everything going great. Everything was going smoothly, everything was awesome, everyone was happy, you were happy, everyone in your life was happy, everything was great and everything was easy, and you decided to just start doing something harmful to yourself or others for no reason. Okay? I can guarantee you that you were not living this awesome life, everything was great, and then you just decided to fuck it up for yourself because you wanted to cause chaos. And this is the thing, right? If you are the kind of person who genuinely just wants to hurt other people, if you are the kind of person who genuinely just wanted to fuck shit up, you're not watching this video, right? You don't care. You don't have shame and you don't have guilt. Here's how you can tell that you are not that bad, evil person. Because I know that there are going to be some people who come to watch this video and say, no, but there really are people who really just get off on hurting other people, who really just get off on destroying the lives of themselves and others just for the sake of doing it. And I'm going to say, okay, great. That's not who I'm talking to, because you are not that person. And I guarantee that you are not that person, because again, if you were, you would not be watching this video. You would not be experiencing shame and guilt for the pain that you're causing other people. You would not be experiencing shame and guilt for the chaos that you're causing in your own life. You would be blaming everyone else. You would be thinking it's everyone else's fault and everyone else was shitty to you and everyone else deserves it. Or you'd be getting off on it. You'd be happy, satisfied. Okay? So if that's not you, if you're not sitting here saying, yeah, I like the fact that I'm hurting other people. I like the fact that I'm hurting myself. I'm very into the idea that I'm causing chaos where there was order before. I love fucking things up for other people. If that's not you, then that's not you. You don't have to worry about that. This is not who we're talking about. This is not who we're talking to. If you are in the normal range of human psychology, where pain causes you pain and chaos causes you struggle, and you don't like it when you hurt yourselves and others, that's all that matters right now. That's who we're talking to, okay? So I just want to put that out there right now. You are not that person. You are not the kind of person who literally is just here to fuck shit up and hurt other people, and you know because you have shame and guilt. Because you have shame and guilt that you're aware of, that you're not just scapegoating onto everyone else. Because that's what I believe is happening with the narcissists and the sociopaths and psychopaths and the people out there who really genuinely are just hurting other people and have no awareness of it or have an awareness of it and don't care. That's a psychological disorder, right? Like that is deep trauma. That is possibly something neurological. Their brains are wired differently. That's possible chemical problems. That is not the normal range of human psychology that we're talking about. And then second thing is, I know that a lot of us have experienced relationships with people that are narcissistic-like or narcissistic in nature, or people are abusive and they use us and they are very deeply emotionally and psychologically unhealthy. And it seemed like they were getting pleasure from destroying us and being horrible to us and all of this. And generally speaking, in that circumstance, again, that person learned how to be that way. That person probably had a history of being abused, of being misunderstood, of being shown that the only way to get their needs met and the only way to be safe and the only way to be okay in this world was to dominate and was to destroy others and was to hurt and harm others. And again, to understand that about them, to understand that they are working from a place of trauma, they are working from a place of pain, no matter how strong and how domineering and dominant they appear to be, they are working from a place of weakness. They are working from a place of trauma and hurt and not understanding how to have healthy relationships. And when we understand that, that does not mean that we then say, okay, well then that's okay, and we make room for it and it's fine and this person can just continue to abuse me because I see that they're just hurting, right? Like that kind of unhealthy level of love and light, essentially. That is not what I'm promoting here either, okay? Because here's the thing about real awareness. True awareness will show us the reality of how someone got to where they are. True awareness will show us that generally all of us are innocent and we're doing the best we can with what we were given. And as horrible and harmful and chaotic as our behavior might be, and as our way of being might be, and as like I say, harmful as we might be to ourselves and others, there's always going to be a reason for it. There's always going to be a need that went unmet for a very long time. There's always going to have been that we were in unsafe environments for long, long periods of time, and we just learned to adapt by defending ourselves and hurting other people. And there's always going to be a reason why we got where we were that is completely understandable. And like I say, not you are just fundamentally horrible. It's going to be you are adapting and you are doing the best you can with what you have and with what you understood and with the skills that you have right now and the awareness that you have right now and all of these things. And you got here through a series of events. You didn't just arrive here. Okay? And we're going to understand that and we're going to see that. And then that does not mean that whatever we're doing or that whatever someone else is doing is okay and now we just make room for it and it's okay. That's not what awareness means. Okay? When we understand how and why someone is the way that they are, that is not the same thing as saying, and now their behavior is okay, and we just tolerate it. Understanding is not synonymous with tolerance. Understanding is not synonymous with tolerance. Okay? Just because we understand why someone is the way that they are, and we have compassion for that, and we understand that, does not mean that their behavior is not then harming us, causing degradation, and that we need to say, okay, now that I understand where this person is coming from, and I can see where they are incapable of change right now, where they are unwilling to change their behavior, where they are just going to continue to harm me, that's when we say, okay, and now that's why I set a boundary. That's why I start to say no. That's why I start to move myself out of this relationship. That's healthy awareness. I can see why you're doing this. I can totally understand that you got here for a reason. But it's still not okay. It's still not harmful. And in order to be kind to myself, right? I need to start setting boundaries. I need to start allowing myself the catharsis of healing and being upset and not giving you the benefit of the doubt for a while and all of these things. And I'm going to talk about this more in my next video about like when it's actually very healing and healthful to go to that dark place where we don't have compassion for other people and where we don't look for the positive and where we don't look to be in our higher awareness so that we can let ourselves process the damage that we've been through. That's a part of that. That's a part of awareness. And making that space and creating those boundaries and creating that shift in the relationship dynamic is important. Okay, so that's about other people. Because I know that this often, like I say, gets really confusing when I'm talking about our relationship with ourselves, and we try to apply that to our relationship with everyone else. And I want to make it very clear that our relationship with ourselves and how we're going to handle our own awareness and our own process of understanding our patterns and our behaviors and what is and isn't okay and all that stuff is a different thing than how we treat others and our relationship with others. Okay? How we treat ourselves is not the exact same as how we're going to treat everyone else. How we're going to treat everyone else is not the exact same as how we're going to treat ourselves. Because we don't have control over the behavior of other people. We cannot make someone be different. We cannot make someone change the way that they're doing things. We cannot take responsibility for other people and where they are and why they are how they are, and we can't take responsibility for their journey. We can take responsibility for our own journey. We do have to take responsibility for our own journey. We are stuck with ourselves. We are not going to get rid of ourselves. We are not going to be able to take a break from ourselves. We can't take a vacation from ourselves. Our relationship with ourselves is the only one that we can't leave. We can't set a boundary. We can't make it something different than what it is. So it is not the same thing as our relationship with everyone else. So I want to make that very clear. As you're listening to this video, for the rest of this video, I am talking about your relationship with yourself. This does not apply one-to-one directly to how you interact with everyone else around you. Please contextualize. Okay? This is not about making it okay that other people hurt you. This is not about trying to find compassion for everyone and understanding them and then just letting them be how they are. This is not about unconditional acceptance of everyone else's behavior. Because, like I say, your relationship with yourself is a completely different relationship than the relationship you have with everybody else. So this has to put in the context of how you treat yourself. And it's put in the context of how you, someone with normal psychology, treats yourself. This is not what a narcissist would do or what a sociopath would do. This is not the advice we would give to people who are genuinely in a position of wanting to hurt other people. We are talking to people who have normal empathy, normal shame and guilt, normal pain and pleasure sensors. You, a normal person. Okay? That is who we are talking to, and that is what we are talking about. Okay. So again, when we are starting in any way, so starting is a relative term, to develop awareness around anything. So when we are noticing that there's a pattern in our life that is painful, and we can see that we have certain behavior patterns that play into that pain, when we can see that there are certain behaviors and certain things in our lives that we don't want, that aren't working for us, that like I say, that we want to change, that we want to investigate, that we want to understand, that is new awareness. So I'm not talking necessarily like you just started your spiritual journey and you just started becoming self-aware. This can be someone who's been self-aware and been doing these things for decades. It's just anytime we come into a new awareness, a new understanding to us, so relative to what we were aware of before, now we are more aware than we were. And when we start to develop this awareness that we are playing a role in our own pain, that there is something that we are doing that was causing issues, that we are wrong about something, that we were wrong about something, any of this stuff that we were causing damage we didn't know we were causing, we are naturally going to have that shame voice, that guilt voice that comes up and says, see, you're bad, you're wrong, you made a mistake, you did it wrong, you're bad, you're horrible, you should feel bad about this, you're hopeless, you're stuck now, you'll never be able to get out of this, you're never going to be able to fix this, look at all this damage you caused to yourself and to others, and everyone's just going to hate you now, and all of that stuff. Okay? So now we have to understand where that voice comes from. Instead of, because again, most of us are going to hear that voice and we're going to fully identify with it. Right? We're going to hear that voice and we're going to be like, yep, that is the voice of truth. That is the only thing that makes any sense. And there's going to be that other voice that says, see, now if I'm nice to myself, or if I'm compassionate with myself, or if I'm not horrible and mean and terrible to myself, that I'm just letting myself off the hook and I'm going to stay being a horrible person forever. That voice is going to be something we deeply identify with. We're going to say, yep, that voice is 100% true. And we're going to think, if I don't listen to this voice, if I don't validate this voice, if I don't make this voice correct, that I'm a psychopath and I'm just going to keep hurting other people and everyone and not care, and I'm going to destroy myself and I'm going to destroy other people, and I will be a fundamentally bad person, even though I'm already a fundamentally bad person. And I can't let myself off the hook, and I can't pretend that this voice isn't correct, because again, it's right. Because then that voice is going to come with all the evidence for how you're causing harm and you're causing damage and you're hurting yourselves and you're hurting others and all of the shit that's happened. And it's going to be like, see, you're terrible. Okay. So now when that voice comes up and it starts to say that, first thing that, again, I want to remind you, that is the voice of culture. That is the voice of caregivers. That is the voice of misunderstanding. That is not the true voice of awareness. That is not the true voice of maturity. That is not the voice of truth that you need to listen to because it's right about how horrible you are. Okay? Our culture, right now at least, is very emotionally immature and has very few emotional tools for dealing with pain. Okay? So we need to understand that that voice is actually an immature voice. And as hard as that might be to accept, and as hard as that might be to see, because for a lot of us, that's the only voice we've ever heard. That's the only voice we've ever known. When we have made a mistake, when we have hurt ourselves or hurt others, most of us are going to look back in our childhoods, we're going to look back to our lives, and we're not going to see that we were treated with kindness. We're not going to see that we were treated with understanding and like, okay, what were you feeling and what happened and that there was an exploration that helped you to discover what was going on with you and helped you to understand a new and better way of doing things, right? Most of us are going to look back for all of our histories and we're going to see that we were blamed, we were shamed, we were abandoned, and we were rejected. That when we made a mistake, when we hurt ourselves, when we hurt others, that it was almost always interpreted by others as we were bad, we were causing harm on purpose, we weren't good, and we needed to be disciplined, we needed to be scolded, we needed to be reprimanded, we needed to be abandoned, we needed to be abused in order that we would change. Okay? So in our childhoods, when that happened, when we were abandoned, when we were blamed, when we were shamed, when we were perceived as bad, and we felt that caregiver or the authority figure or the friend group pull away, or we felt them attack, you can't be like this, you have to change, this isn't okay, that fear, that anger, that all of those negative emotions that got projected onto us, when that happened, our nervous systems and our bodies perceived that we were in physical danger. Our bodies and our nervous systems perceived that we were about to lose our source of connection to everything we needed to survive. That we just made a mistake, we just fucked up, we just hurt someone or hurt ourselves. And now our source of love, our source of nourishment, our source of comfort, our source of connection, our source of food, water, shelter, is going away. Okay, right? And so that was going to be the greatest existential crisis that we could face as a child. We just did something, now we're perceived as bad, and now we're being hurt or we're being abandoned by the people that we depend on for everything. So we were going to interpret that as, okay, I have to change this part of myself. I have to agree that this part of myself is bad and wrong and evil and dangerous. And that when I fuck up and when I mess up and when I hurt other people, that it means something horrible about me. And not only does it mean something horrible about me, it also then puts me in a state of existential crisis where I might not get my needs met. And the one thing we had control over, remembering this always, 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 when we are developing these understandings of what happens when we're wrong, what happens when we hurt ourselves, what happens when we hurt other people, when we were in that childhood state of developing our relationship with being wrong and causing harm and hurting ourselves and hurting others and learning how to meet our needs in the ways we only knew how and all that stuff, it was being wired in that when we fuck up and when we are rejected and when we are abandoned and when we hurt others, we are going to die. We're going to lose the thing we need to survive. We're going to lose our connection to the thing that brings us pleasure and takes our pain away. And again, we did not have the power to meet our own needs, to understand our own needs, to understand how to get connection, how to get food, how to get all of these things without these people. All we knew is I now need to morph my behavior. I have to memorize whatever I just did that was wrong and not do that again. I need to shift my way of being in some way, shape, or form so that I won't be rejected, abandoned, or shamed like that ever again. And that shame voice, that guilt voice that tells you, you are bad, you are wrong, you are fundamentally flawed for having been this way, for doing this thing, whatever. We were taught that. Because again, what was actually happening in our early childhoods, when we were making mistakes and when we were hurting ourselves and hurting others, we didn't know any better. We literally didn't know any different. We were just trying to figure out how the world worked. We were just trying to adapt to the conditions that we were raised in. We were trying to express ourselves. We were trying to go through our growth process, which again, so many parents, so many of our caregivers had no idea about developmental psychology. And so a normal growth process of hitting another child before you learn how to share, or spilling water as you're learning your motor skills, all of that stuff, which are not wrong, which are not bad, which are not shameful, which are just learning parts on the path, like learning addition before you learn subtraction, before you learn multiplication, before you learn division, was seen as you are a small adult who has all the adult skills and all the adult awareness, and you're just choosing to be bad. It was projected onto us over and over and over again that you must be choosing to be like this. You are intentionally causing harm, you're intentionally making a mess, you're intentionally doing these bad things that you know better, and you're just not doing better. When for most of us, we absolutely did not know better. We were children. We didn't know better. We didn't have any other way. And then again, none of us were raised in healthy environments where we were free to be ourselves and we were free to express and we were free to grow and we were free to do all these things. There were all these house rules and religious rules and cultural rules and governmental rules and all this stuff that we had to fit into that did not feel good to us. Because again, we have to remember this. Societal structures, religious structures, education structures, so many of the ways of being that we had to morph into as we were growing up as human beings did not feel good to us, did not feel aligned, because they aren't. Because they literally, physically, mentally, emotionally are just not healthy for the human being, but they are the way that culture is and the way that we have to be in order to fit in. So we were constantly learning to battle with ourselves and to fight with these parts of ourselves and to see these parts of ourselves as bad and wrong and fundamentally flawed and dangerous because they didn't align with how we had to be in order to be accepted and approved of. Because again, remember, especially growing up as children, to be rejected by your caregivers or your friends group or your teachers or your religious leaders, it was so scary to have that happen. It was literally the end of the world to you as a child because they were your source for everything, and you didn't know that there were other ways of being. You didn't know that there were other people who might accept you. You didn't know that what you were feeling was actually right, and one day you were going to have the autonomy to create a life where you could do that. You didn't have any of that awareness. So we were learning again that we have to fit in to be safe. In order to fit in, we have to get rid of these parts of ourselves. We have to make these parts of ourselves that are not real. We have to do things we don't want to do. We have to not do things we do want to do. We have to resist our pain, and we have to resist our pleasure and do all of these things. And we're learning over and over and over again that anytime we get abandoned, abused, rejected, that it's our fault, it's an existential crisis, and the only thing we have control over is ourselves. We don't have control over our environment. We don't have control over getting our own needs met. We don't have control over any of that stuff. All we know to do is to blame ourselves and shame ourselves and berate ourselves so that we will change, so that we will then be loved and accepted and therefore safe. And then, like I say, that voice is being completely reinforced from the outside when we're being blamed and shamed and abandoned by our caregivers and our friends and our neighbors and our religious leaders and our governments and all of these things. That's where that voice came from. And then on top of that, again, none of us were raised, I'm projecting. Maybe you were. Maybe you were the kind of person that this doesn't apply to you. And again, you're probably not listening to this video if it does. We're raised in an environment where we were fostered in our growth, in our expansion, in our self-awareness, in our natural growth cycle, where we learned that, okay, this caused harm, this caused pain, what was going on? Why did I do that? What was I trying to do? What was I attempting to do? What was my intention? What was the outcome? And none of us learned how to learn from failure and learn from pain in a neutral way, in a non-moral way, which I believe is what is healthy. Because again, in real reality, there's always going to be pain. There's always going to be consequences for an action that is truly out of alignment with what is good for us. When you are a small child and you hit another child, there is pain there. And you, as an empathetic child, if you're guided to say, okay, can you look at the person you just hit, look at them crying, can you see, what do you feel? That's never going to feel good to a normal psychological child. That consequence of pain, that consequence of, ooh, that didn't feel good, that consequence of, that's not the response that I want, that's not the outcome that I wanted. It partially met the need. Right? I hit the kid because they had a toy that I wanted and now I have the toy. So it sort of did it, but there's pain involved. So how can I learn to get the same outcome of can we share the toy without the painful part? Without that being any cause for moral concern? Because again, the child didn't understand. The child just knew that it wanted the toy and that was the easiest thing. But then again, if we were to say, okay, well, how did that feel? How did you feel when you hit the other child? How does it feel to see that the other child is hurting now? A psychologically normal child would not feel good about that. So then we can say, okay, so how about we try a different technique for getting the toy? How about we let them play with it for 10 minutes and then you play with it for 10 minutes and see how that feels instead? And then when the child tried that, it would probably felt better. Yeah, they got to play with the toy and there wasn't crying and no one got hurt and now we have a friend. And if we could look at it like that, you see, like the child wasn't fundamentally bad and abusive and just wanted to hurt the other child. The child knew that it wanted the toy and that was hitting the other child was the only way he knew how to do it. And so you teach them, okay, well, what were the consequences of that? How did it feel? And is there an alternative way to get the same need met without the negative consequence? That's problem solving. That's using our emotions and our intellect to help us get an outcome in the most aligned way possible. And when we remove the morality from it, that doesn't mean we take away the pain. That doesn't mean we take away the consequence. It doesn't make hitting okay. It's just we don't say, well, that child is fundamentally bad. Because the child isn't fundamentally bad. It was misunderstood. And so this is how we are as adults. Everything that we're doing that's causing ourselves or other people pain is our attempt at getting a need met in the only way we know how to get it met. It's our attempt to create something in the only way we know how to create something. It's our attempt to stifle something in ourselves or to not be something or to not do something because we learned over and over and over again that to be that is to be shamed, is to be rejected, is to be blamed, and therefore to die. So we have a lot of misunderstanding about ourselves and a lot of shame and guilt and projection of you are bad and you are wrong and you should not be this way that came from an entire history of being misunderstood, of being projected onto, of being told that we were wrong and bad, of being abandoned and abused and shamed instead of taught. So now we have to start to develop this new relationship with ourselves. We have to start to be those caregivers for ourselves that we never had. That's what the self-love path is. It's that we start to understand that as empathic, normal feeling beings, reality is always speaking to us. There's no such thing as you're just going to become a horrible person and you don't know it because you just let yourself off the hook. Because I think that's what we're all afraid of. We're all afraid if we don't listen to our shame and our guilt and our blame voices, that we're just going to become a horrible person, we're going to be abusive to ourselves and others, and we're going to have no idea that it was happening, or we're just going to be selfish and not care. And I'm going to say it again, you are a psychologically normal person. That is impossible. Because real reality will always speak to us in pain and pleasure. There's no such thing as kidding yourself if you're also doing your feeling work, right? If you're on the self-love path and you're getting in your body and you're feeling and you're doing your emotional mastery stuff, you will not be able to deny the painful consequences of things that are out of alignment with reality. Your awareness is always going to be tuned to that which is not working, that which is not getting the results that you desire. Because there's always going to be pain. There's always going to be pain involved. And when we can look at that pain and say, okay, this is just a messenger of my misunderstanding. And that's why I made that video so long ago about we need to re-establish our relationship with being wrong. We are going to be wrong. We are going to be wrong a lot in this life. We are going to attempt to get our needs met in ways that are not the best way. We are going to hurt ourselves. We are going to hurt other people. So long as we're alive, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to try to get a need met that we don't fully understand. We're going to do a thing and have it half work and half not work. And what I'm saying to you is literally everything that you're doing that's causing you pain, that's causing others pain, that's a habit you can't break, that's you're scapegoating, you're numbing, you're coping, whatever, you're self-sabotage, all of it has a reason, and probably multiple reasons for why you're doing what you're doing. It's meeting a need on some level. It's helping to suppress something that you don't know how to express. It's helping you to cope with the ways that you have to be in reality that you don't know how to change and that don't feel good to you. It's helping you be who you were supposed to be. There's always a reason. It's always, you learned this. You learned this as the only option. So this is why I'm saying, in true awareness, you are going to be aware of the negative consequences of whatever you're doing when it's not in alignment with reality. Because there will be pain. You're never going to be able to fool yourself into thinking you're doing something great when you aren't. So long as you're honest about the pain that you're in, so long as you're willing to admit there's contrast here, there's pain, there's some outcomes that I don't want, you will always be aware of where there's room for shifting to something better. Second thing, right? True awareness will always come with, you'll understand how you got here. You'll understand why you're doing this. And so this is why I'm saying, your awareness work is not just look at all the shitty things that I'm doing and look at all the pain that I'm causing, and that's what awareness is. We become aware of the pain, and then the next step on the awareness path is why. We need to have compassion for ourselves. I'm doing this for a reason, even if I don't understand it. And I know that this, again, is so hard. This is the hardest thing almost any of us will ever do, which is to assume innocence in ourselves before we understand why we're doing what we're doing, right? Everyone comes to me and says, no, I know that this thing is bad because look at these bad outcomes. And I say, okay, well, can we assume innocence? And they're like, absolutely not. Until I can see very obviously and clearly why there is innocence in this, or that this isn't my fault, or that I'm not horrible, I'm not going to do it. And again, I want to tell you that that is your protective child voice trying to keep you safe. Because the only way the protective child knows to deal with shame and guilt and pain and wrong and mistakes is shame and guilt, so that you will change. So that you will memorize whatever the new behavior you're supposed to be doing is, and so that you will do it, because you never got a chance to actually learn from real reality. And who and what you really were and what really felt good to you probably wasn't okay. You learned to go against your pain and to go, right, to do things that were painful and to ignore things that were pleasurable and all of that stuff. Your pain-pleasure wires got totally crossed because that's what you had to do and had to be in order to get along in your family and in your culture, and you had to do that to survive as a child. So that is what that child voice is doing now. The inner critic is the child voice trying to keep you safe, trying to make it so that you don't change from how you actually are right now. It's trying to keep you stuck because this is the way that has worked. Or again, it's constantly trying to get you to be what your caregivers wanted you to be, what your society wanted you to be, no matter how much it doesn't feel good to you, no matter how much it causes you to have to cope and numb and stimulate and scapegoat. That inner critic is trying to keep you in alignment with what society has taught you needed to be in order to be safe. That is what that inner critic is trying to do. So this is why the second half of this is when we start to discover our true selves. Most of the time, we're not going to feel like, yay, I've discovered my true self and this is who I really am and I'm so excited to step into my truth. We're going to discover who we really are, and all of our stories around that is going to be shame and guilt and bad and I can't be this way. And see, oh my God, I'm discovering that this is who and what I really am, and here's all the reasons that's not okay. Here's all the evidence for how that got me shamed and guilted and destroyed, but we might not even see that. We're all just going to see if I am this way, I'm going to destroy my own life. I'm going to lose all my own friends. I'm horrible. I'm bitchy. I'm weak. I'm lazy. I'm stupid. I'm fill in the blank. Because that's the association we have with our true nature, not because our true nature is actually bad or wrong or stupid or lazy or any of these things, but because that's how our true nature was perceived by the people we depended on in our childhoods for everything, and therefore they taught us how to perceive these parts of ourselves and then to reject them, to try to fix them, to try to get rid of them. So now anytime we're like, okay, I'm going to start to become aware of who I really am, again, that child voice that says, no, we cannot be that, we cannot do that, here's all the reasons why, because you got rejected and abandoned and abused and it's going to ruin your life? No. And that's going to feel completely real to us. We're all going to think, oh gosh, no, like I am the one person who really is just bad and really is just lazy and really is just stupid and really is just whatever it is that we think that we are. We are absolutely going to be convinced of that, because that's our inner child critic saying, you better not do that, because it will get you rejected and abandoned and you will die. That's what that voice is doing. So the voice that comes up when you realize that you're wrong or that you're bad or that you're causing harm, and the voice that comes up when you're starting to become aware of who you really are, that both tell you you're a horrible, terrible person, and if you are compassionate with this, you're going to destroy your own life, and if you really are this, then you're going to destroy your own life and you're going to hurt everyone and everyone around you. That is that inner child voice trying to protect you from being rejected and abandoned by a culture and a family and friends that did not understand you, that did not help you go through your growth process, that didn't understand your wants and needs, and that made it unsafe for you to be who you are. That is what that voice is actually doing. That is why that voice gets the loudest when we first start coming into awareness, because it does not want you to change. That voice does not want you to change into who you really are. And that voice does not want to let you off the hook of feeling shame and guilt and bad. Because again, it thinks if it does, you won't change, you won't be different. So it's right, it's that double-edged sword. It's either trying to keep you stuck how you are right now, because this is how you learn to adapt to be accepted, and at least more accepted than you would be if you were some other way. Or it's trying to keep you continually striving to be something that you're never going to be, continually striving to be something that does not work for you, continually striving for that job or that career or those relationships or that body or whatever that has nothing to do with your real true self. Or, right, so that you will be accepted one day. Or again, it's trying to say that if you're wrong, if you're bad, if you're causing harm, if you're doing all these things, you are fundamentally flawed and bad, as a way of trying to get you to change without understanding. So here's the real reality, real awareness. When we have real, true adult awareness and we discover that we're causing harm, we will look for why, what the patterns are, what the needs of the current way of harm are meeting, what needs the current way of harm are meeting, what the positive benefits are, what the true desires are, what the true needs are, and we start to develop new and better ways of getting our needs met. New and better ways of communicating. New and better ways of interacting with our bodies. We learn something new that we didn't know before. And we grow naturally into something that genuinely feels better than what we're currently doing, because it meets the same needs with less of the negative consequences. That's what true awareness does. True awareness says, okay, I'm doing this harmful thing. Why? What am I getting out of it? Where did I learn it's the only way? Where am I being told that any other way would be wrong and bad and harmful and ruin my life? And we start to allow ourselves to slowly align with more and more reality, trying new and different ways of getting the same needs met, having compassion for ourselves, letting ourselves off the hook on things that right? Learning to allow ourselves to be rejected and shamed and abandoned by other people and seeing that we don't die, that's what that process is. And we learn new and different and better ways of getting our same needs met. And then we just don't want to do the old thing anymore. Even, so like I say, right, the old way had harm, the old way had negative consequences. We will never have to use discipline to not have to do that anymore when we've discovered what we were really getting out of it, and we've discovered a new and better way of getting that need met. Because the new and better way will feel better. And there might be some discipline to get ourselves to do the new thing because, again, our nervous systems are scared. And we're going to lose people and people aren't going to understand us and we're going to be weird and we're going to be rejected and all that stuff is going to happen. And we have to allow ourselves to go through that process sometimes in order to really discover the needs that we're getting met through our addictions and our coping mechanisms and our self-sabotage and the ways that we're hurting others and our codependencies and all that stuff. We are going to have to let ourselves see that now as an adult, we don't die when we're misunderstood. We don't die when we're rejected. We don't die when we're wrong. We learn to be able to admit that we were wrong and we just didn't know and we don't have the answer now and we're learning. And we try new different things and see how that works and see how that works. And we're open to learning. That's what real awareness is. That's what real awareness does. It completely can acknowledge and validate harm where harm is being caused. And it understands, we look for, where did that pattern come from? What are all the components? What are the needs? How am I holding myself back? All of that stuff. And we develop new and different, better ways of getting those same needs met. And new and different ways of being that support us better. We leave relationships, we learn to leave a job, we learn to whatever we need to do. We learn how to support ourselves differently within systems that we can't change. Because that's a part of it. Sometimes we can't always make it better. And we are coping and we're numbing and we're stimulating to help us cope with a societal thing that we literally can't do anything about. So we get rid of that shame and we get rid of that guilt and we start to understand, okay, no, this is just how I'm supporting myself in an unideal circumstance right now. And how can I support myself the best that I can? Because we're never all going to be like perfectly non-harming. That's not a thing. Or we start to come to understand who and what we really are. And again, some of these parts might be immature. Some of these parts might need to grow. Some of these parts might not be awesome right now, and that's okay. We love them like the children that they are, and we start to develop them with love and safety and more. What do you need? What do you want? What do you feel? Validation, growth. And again, we go through that process of expressing ourselves more and more, just a little bit, and seeing that even if we get rejected and abandoned and all these things, we don't die because we're adults now. We learn how to meet our own needs. We learn how to empower ourselves a little bit more. And that's what true awareness actually does. It will always point you to your innocence, how you're just doing the best you can with what you have right now. It will show you that it is not wrong or a moral failing to not know something, nor is it wrong or a moral failing to have been doing something that was harmful because it was the only way you knew how to do what you needed to do. You're always going to come to that. And then, like I say, real awareness will help you start to take the steps necessary to make the changes that you need to make without shame and guilt. You'll learn from pain and pleasure. You'll learn from, okay, well, this felt good, this didn't feel good. This outcome matched my intention, this outcome did not match my intention. This is who I really am, and people get upset, but hey, it's who I am. That is real awareness. So remember, those voices come up when we're developing awareness because that's what the child knows to do, to try to keep us from ever stepping outside the bounds of what we're in right now. And sometimes, again, we are going to learn that the reason we're coping and numbing and self-sabotaging is because we don't want to be the people that we're trying to be right now. We don't want to work the career. We don't want to do the thing. It doesn't work for us. Society sucks. And we have to have compassion for that. And sometimes it means that we are going to have to learn to be rejected and misunderstood and abandoned and see that we're okay. And sometimes it's going to mean that we realize that we're causing harm, and we realize that we're not in the right, and that we realize that we are doing the best we can with what we know, and we need to learn something new. And the more we have compassion for that, the more we make it okay that that is happening, we're not going to make it okay. Because again, the pain will never go away. When you're causing harm to yourself or others, you can make it okay till you're blue in the face, and it's not going to make the pain go away. You'll make it safe for yourself to change. Because we have to remember how our nervous systems work. When we feel loved, accepted, and approved of, that's when we go into a state of rest and digest, because that was wired into our bodies that equals safety. And that's when we're actually capable of change. So again, that last little lie that we all think, if I just shame myself and blame myself and reject myself enough, I will feel bad enough to change. And that is not how our nervous systems work. If we really want to grow into more mature versions of ourselves, we don't want to just memorize a new behavior that we're rejecting our old way of doing things to try to not be bad. If we really want to say, no, I want to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing so that I can get the need met in a better way, we have to feel safe in order to discover that, and then in order for our nervous systems to let us change our behavior. Because when we're in fight or flight, our nervous systems are always going to say, just do what you've always done. Repeat the pattern, because that's how you survived. That was a survival mechanism when we were scared and we survived. Whatever we just did, that pattern of behavior got passed down in the genes. Because obviously, those were the ones that survived. So when we're scared, our nervous system wants to do what we've always done. So if we're seeing that we're causing harm, and we're seeing that we're getting an outcome we don't actually want, we are not going to be able to change that with more shame and guilt, which is the number one thing that sets our bodies into a state of shutdown. We have to come into love and acceptance, and that's when we're going to be able to change the most. From a place of self-love. I want something better. I want something different. I want to understand the needs that I was meeting, why I was doing what I was doing, so that I can find a new and better way. And then I want to make it safe for myself to go there without it making it mean that I was terrible and wrong and bad before. We say, no, I'm always doing the best that I can with what I have, and now I'm ready for something better. That's what self-love lets us do. It lets us admit where we were wrong, and admit where we didn't know, and admit where we were causing harm. Without it being a shameful thing, it just being that was the best I knew at the time, and now I'm ready to do something better. Okay? And the last thing is, right, we might project, instead of having shame and guilt, we blame everyone else. We blame everything else as a way of trying not to feel our own shame. And that's, again, why self-love is so important. That shame and that guilt voice just they need to be loved safe. I see you, I hear you, I get why you're doing this. You're trying to protect me, thank you. But we're not fundamentally bad, and we're not fundamentally flawed. We just learned messed up ways, and that's okay. And now it's okay to learn something new without that meaning that I was wrong and bad and terrible before. That is what true awareness is. I can see where I'm causing harm. I can see where it hurts. And I'm ready to say, that's okay. What am I doing? How is this the best I know to do? And what can I do different? Because I am good. I am fundamentally good. I want what's good. This is my best estimation of good right now. That's what's really going on. That's true awareness. So if your awareness does not include compassion and curiosity and exploration, it is not awareness. Shame and guilt are going to come up to keep you the same, to keep you stuck, to protect you. So we love those voices safe, and then we go into our adult perspective so that we can learn something new. And the adult perspective comes from compassion and curiosity always. Okay? So I hope that was helpful. You are not the one person who is actually wrong and bad and terrible. You have an absolute reason for everything that you're doing. I promise you that. So give yourself the gift of actual awareness so that you can support yourself in something better instead of being stuck in the shame and the guilt that just tells you that you're horrible, which is always a lie. You are not the exception, I promise. You are good. And all the parts of you that got rejected, again, they're probably not bad. Make room for them. See what happens. Okay? Have a fantastic week, day, night, month, whatever. And I'll see you again in the next video.